What's up, DAW Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the DAW. And in this week's episode, we have Bentley Montes. Gosh, I hope I said that right. Or better known as Pixel Terror. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the ego and how it almost destroyed Pixel Terror's career. We're also going to be talking about Bentley's journey to sobriety. That's amazing, by the way. Stay tuned for that. And we're also going to be talking about how Pixel Terror was a duo with Bentley and Aria, and now how it's just Bentley. What's the story behind that? You're going to find out in this week's episode. Also, if you're brand new to the show, my name is Wyatt Troy, and this is a podcast where we interview music producers, singers, songwriters, sound designers, music industry experts, and everyone else on that spectrum on an emotional, philosophical, branding, marketing, and music business basis. Basically, we cover everything that has to do with music that is not the technical side. We talk about the technical side over on our In the DAW series. Go check that out. And we always give a free download with every single episode, so make sure to check the link down in the description. And by the way, if you really enjoy Pixel Terror's music and you really enjoy this episode, then you are going to love AU5's School of Bass. This is his definitive flagship masterclass where he goes over his sound design system that he has used for the last 15 years. He's released over 200 songs with this system. He'll teach you how to make an unlimited amount of sounds, rhythms, textures, basses, blasters, leads, literally anything that you can ever think of. And so if you're interested in something like that, go ahead and check the link down in the description, or you can head on over to dawnation.net/School of Bass. But with DAW Nation, with all that out of the way, let's go behind the DAW with Pixel Terror. I want to welcome you back to another episode of Behind the DAW, and today we have Bentley Montes. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Better known as Pixel Terror. Bentley, my guy, how you doing today?
Doing terrific.
If we could just wade into the shallow end, not go into the deep end yet, but what is one of the worst decisions that you've made for your music career?
It's kind of a culmination of things. I'm going to take my time with this. I know that this is probably something that we'll touch on quite a bit in this interview. Lacking control of ego is a great way to put some pressure on your career and those you're working with. I think that is a fast way to have like a kind of career suicide or something along those terms, is having too big of an ego. I think that kind of pours over into like a lot of different things, like just having general control and maintaining humility at the same time that there is like an importance to a level of ego and a level of knowing who you are. But I think that people just kind of get ahead of themselves sometimes. For me, that kind of poured over into like partying too hard and having a lack of respect for certain things. And for me and for music in general, partying is a big part of the culture. And it's like, I don't see it as necessarily a bad thing for a lot of people. I mean, I wouldn't have a career if it wasn't for like raves and Molly and like, a lot of these kind of things. But as someone that wants to have a lifelong career in music, getting sober was a huge decision for me. Having a lack of control of your ego and a lack of respect for people that you work with, or I think another second runner up would be if you're gonna date, make sure that it's with the right person that sees the value in having big goals and understands that you take this seriously if music is something that you want to do with your life, or a career in entertainment or what have you.
Yeah, dude, those were really great answers. So what I got from that is, number one, letting the ego getting out of control, right? Which led to kind of splintered off to a whole bunch of other things, lack of respect towards other people, treating other people, not just the people that you were working with, but so on and so forth. There's so many ways that the not taming of the ego could affect your career. Also, not being with someone that is compatible with your dreams or is not supportive with your dreams, so on and so forth. And I want to go down all those paths, and we're absolutely going to. And DAW Nation, make sure to stay all the way to the end, because we're going to ask Bentley what is one of the best decisions he made in his music career, clear at the end. So make sure to stay tuned for that. I can foresee a lot of people listening to this and wanting more information about the ego. Perhaps they've heard that term before and they're very familiar with it and they know what that means. Perhaps maybe they have a distorted view of it. Maybe some people don't even know what it is. And so in your words, in your view, how would you define ego in this context of what we've been talking about?
From my understanding, there's the ego and the id, and the id is kind of like what our spiritual composition of like what our true self is. And when you say like you have a heightened ego, it means like you have like bombastic or like enlarged depiction of yourself, or like who you think you deserve to be, or something that you haven't necessarily achieved yet when you have like a heightened ego. So I guess basically to avoid having too much of an ego, it's focusing more on just what matters now in the moment, which is just like consistently putting in the work. There's just no use in chasing things or trying to take things that aren't necessarily yours. Whether that's just like the spotlight or like your time will come whenever the universe serves it to you.
You allowing your ego to, I don't want to say take control, but probably be more elevated than it needs to be, because we all need an ego, right? The ego has to be there. It's a part of us, but it's when it gets out of control. So do you have a good hard example for us of a time or a place when your ego was not checked, it got out of control and caused, I hate to say side effects because it makes it sound like a drug commercial, side effects that you did not want, or scenarios that you did not want?
An example was just like somebody was telling me to get off of stage. I had just done like a B2B or something, and I was like, who the are you? And it turned out to be so-and-so's tour manager. It definitely backfired. So thinking that like you're better than someone, even because, you might have more talent or like, have accomplished more things or this or that. Like, I think we should treat everybody with respect, as much as we can. I think that it's part of growing up, and I think that it's part of evolving. And I think some of the best artists in the world are just extremely humble and like just love what they do. And it's not like it has to have any sort of like moral downsides, I guess would be a good way to put it.
That story about the tour manager, that hurt. I got some similar stories, and maybe my ego is going to not let me say that right now because I feel like it hurt my ego. How is your ego doing nowadays? I mean, it sounds like you've grown a lot as a person. You're not only aware of the ego and when it gets out of control. I mean, how do you still feel the, for lack of a better term, the old ego trying to creep its ugly head in? You're like, shut up, you know what I mean? Or are you the most humble person now? Like, is the ego completely under control? Where's Bentley out with his ego nowadays?
This is a good conversation because I think it's probably important. The subject of ego does come up a lot. If I get like turned down by a girl, then I'm like egotistical about it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go get in the gym and work hard and make more money and build myself more to like meet this level of qualifications or whatever, you know what I mean? So there is like a fuel factor to how the ego works, I think, that drives people and artists to get to where they want to go. I think that it's absolutely necessary to have an ego, but I think it's also just how you approach and like react to different things that show having control of the ego. And, if you're offended or if you're patronized or you feel like somebody's putting you down, even if it's not the case, it's that reaction, the way you react to that is based out of a fear that you're not aligned with the version of yourself that you are hoping to be. You'll lash out or be like just, again, like disrespectful, or I've had people like blatantly disrespect me or say something or downplay my abilities as an artist or tell me to go back to Guitar Center, or like, I've never worked at Guitar Center, but like in even more recent history where I've reacted and been like, well, that's okay that you don't see the version of myself that I know I am. And then that sort of changed reaction is just like what indicates more control. If you're putting in relentless work and you have more proof of concept of yourself and what you're doing, then like you're going to be more confident in that. And there won't be as many things that kind of like shake your ego as much, I guess, so to speak.
This is so pertinent to our conversation right now. My dad's side is going to be showing right now. Have you seen Inside Out 2? Have you ever seen that movie?
I watched like the first half of the first one and I fell asleep. This was like a few months ago, but I heard that I need to see both of them.
I don't blame you because they're absolutely created for children. So it's kind of hard to stay engaged the entire time. I really wish they would make an EDM producer version of them so that it really like honed in on the things that we all struggle with. But just the stuff that you're describing is so pertinent to what is described in that movie. Like there's things inside of you, there's different sides of you inside of you, and it's important to have a balance between all of them, right? So like the common thing in there is like there's joy and there's sadness and there's anger and disgust and happiness, whatever else, and it's important to let each one do its job, right? When one overshadows the other or one takes control over the other, then it causes problems. And so what you're talking about with ego right now, it's the future imaginary best version of you that you want to see take shape, right? And that's good. We need something like that. We need something to work towards and something to push us to become better. But when that takes over, and especially when someone starts attacking us because we're not that better version of us, that's where a lot of the attacking of the ego comes in. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
And so how do we get to a place where you can still have an ego to help you see the path, you see the journey before you of what you want to become, but not let what other people say or even what yourself says destroy that path to the point where you have to retaliate? Is that the journey?
Yeah. I mean, the ego side is what's causing you to be more like, oh, I need this, or if I don't have this, then I don't have that. Like then I'm not worthy, or like, you know, if this girl doesn't approve of me, or if this manager, if I don't get with this agent, then like I'm not, you know, worth anything, or you know what I mean? There's a fine line between arrogance and confidence. And again, I think arrogance and ego comes out of a basis of fear of not existing as the projection of who you think you are, in a sense. That's okay, because who you think you are is like what you're working towards. The confidence will come in the foundation of like building who you are. And if you're doing that, then you're just going to react differently to those kind of situations. It can be funny to be egotistical. Like, I mean, like, I don't know if you follow Ronnie Radke or anything like that. He is an example of someone that I think is funny, that like uses ego to be funny.
He's still under control of the ego, right? He's choosing to amplify it to for comical reasons, right? It's not the ego taking control of him, so to say. And so that's still totally within the realm of you controlling your ego instead of the other way around. The other day I was on TikTok and your video came across talking about how you just celebrated 2 years of sobriety, right? Like just barely, like a couple months ago, correct?
Yeah, January 28th was 2 years.
That video really touched me. It really struck a chord for me. You know, I've had addiction problems in the past, and so that really, you know, hearing your story, hearing you share your story and how authentic you were about it, I thought it was really, really amazing. I want to know more. You know, you shared some of the pains and the struggles that you went through. That you shared some of the reasons why you eventually led to that. But I want the behind the scenes of your sobriety story. You know, if there's stories that led up to you wanting to be sober, you know, if there was hard times during, you know, you trying to get sober, I want to hear all that. All that resonates with me so much. And so take it away, my guy. And in what direction would you like to talk about your sobriety?
Well, I'm just, can I ask you, like, what, you said 15 years. I don't know if your audience knows that, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we were talking before. Well, actually, this summer it'll be 16 years. So we're coming up on 16 years now.
I'm going to reverse this interview right now.
Oh gosh.
Because I'm just curious, I don't know if you can just brief me. Like, so how old were you when you got sober, and like, what was the problem?
So I grew up in a very abusive household with a very abusive father figure. And so I turned to, at a very young age, around like 12-ish, turned to very addictive behaviors. You know, there was a lot of pornography. There was a lot of drinking and doing drugs, even at a very young age. And so that kind of ruled my life for the next couple of years until I was around 15. Your very common symptoms of being an addict, right? You try to go a day without drinking and you get massive headaches. You won't be able to see straight. You can't think about anything else, right? Or, you know, you watch a movie and you see someone drinking on the TV and it it makes you break out and it triggers you. You break out in rashes. And so there was a lot of that going on. I primarily got into that, not necessarily to party, not necessarily to have fun. It was just a form of covering up the emotions. It was just a form of, I didn't know how to deal with these very complex emotions that come, especially in the teenage years. These substances, whatever they may have been at the time, whether it was pills or weed or whatever, it just covered it up. It just blocked it for a minute. It was like a pause on feelings. And so I was totally down for it, but it started to affect me. I mean, I lost so much weight. It was affecting my relationships, like with my parents, specifically with my mom, because my dad, that's a whole different story. But it was getting me into legal trouble. I was in and out of DT, which is like a kid form of prison in Utah. I don't know if that exists other places. And so it just got to a point when I was 15, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was suicidal. I didn't want to deal with it. And, I felt like, okay, well, I either got to kill myself because I don't want to do this, or I want to man up and try to face these things and try to deal with it. And so let me tell you what, dude, you're on 2 years right now. I remember back in those days, like I couldn't even imagine getting to 2 years, right? Like the first week was hell. It was awful. It was the worst. It's the monster that you can't get away from. Anyways, did I answer your question? I don't mean to commandeer this podcast. And so did that answer your question?
Yeah. I talk to Little Texas a lot because he's also sober. He's been sober for quite a while. I think 10 years now. I had thought about getting sober a couple different times. I kind of like had done like a few different stints of sobriety for like 9 months and then for like 6 months. A lot of people say that they had great experiences with Savage, Party Animal, Bentley. Kind of circling back to what I was saying about Little Texas, like the way he kind of puts it is just like, what are the net positives versus the net negatives? The net positives of sobriety just outweighed the net negatives by so much. It wasn't even like, when you look at it like that, it's just like, it's not even a question. It's just like the negatives were, that I wasn't as reliable in a multitude of facets, like financially, being considerate or being like conscious of how I treat people. I would say like most of the trajectory of my non-sobriety was pretty average. Like I started drinking when I was like 14, 15. I was taking whatever fun drugs you could find at Walgreens, like Corseidin, cough and cold, like whatever you could find in a suburban neighborhood. Like I wasn't doing blow or anything until I was like in my early 20s. Some people in college were doing it. I would just drink, but I was definitely one of the hardest drinkers in college. Out of college, going to a lot of festivals, just overdoing it to the extreme. I mean, I think I did like 18 Pokeballs. If you don't know what Pokeballs are, they're like quad stacks of ecstasy. I did like 18 of those in a weekend one time. I took like 24 hits of acid over the course of a weekend in Seattle one time. I didn't have any problem saying yes, to whatever came my way. The turning point for me was just, it was a culmination of things. It was losing my dad to suicide 3 years ago. I came to terms with the situation pretty quickly. Like, I wasn't like, oh, like he doesn't love the family, or like he was in his early 70s. And I think that he still had plenty of time to go. I mean, he thought that he had early onset Alzheimer's, and he kind of started having trouble remembering things. And my understanding of the situation is that he didn't want to be a burden. I think that he was still pretty far away from that. Like, he had at least I would like to think he had at least another 5 to 10 years, like could have been here for like the birth of, my first child or my brother's first child, or, you have to sit and wonder if like you had more time. So I have heard, and I think that even my dad said that, you don't really become a man until you lose your dad, because, for obvious reasons, I'm like the man of my family now. I'm a man of the house. My mom has since got remarried. I'm left with what he's already given me. There's nothing, I have to figure the rest out on my own. That was a big moment. I mean, like amidst very much on the rise with Pixel Terror at the time. And I thought that I had control of it to some degree. I was very much drowning my emotions by just continuing to do, it got to the point where I was just like, I would just have a few drinks just to go find cocaine. Like I didn't even want to go out unless I knew that there was going to be cocaine wherever I was going, or if I was going out with someone, somebody would have blow. Like the alcohol was just a vehicle to start doing cocaine almost. To even want to socialize, like I want to be doing cocaine. I was like, this is not cool. Like I was in a relationship that was pretty toxic at the time for various reasons, like myself included, very much so. I was actually like on a stint of sobriety for a good portion of that before I got off. And I think that I got off partially because the girl I was dating was younger. She loved to party. She was fine with me not partying, but I wanted to party with her. I'm not going to say that it's her fault by any means. I think that I made my own decision to like essentially relapse at that point. That relationship didn't work out. I still love the girl. We're on good terms now. Like we were both very much doing our own thing. Reiterating, the net positives, net negatives, like for me, looking at how much time and energy I was spending on these other things that weren't pertinent to my music career. Like even if I just was going out 1 or 2 nights a week, but going hard, it might be another 2 days before I'm feeling like 100%. And then it's like all of a sudden 4 days of my week not being 100%. It's not optimal output. And when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, and, like most people in the world, like party, even if it's like healthy or an acceptable amount, it still gives me the edge. I'm like, well, if I'm sober 100% of the time and I wake up every day, and you can't wake up every single day feeling like $1 million, like it's just impossible, but at least knowing that there's a good chance that I will every single day, and like being able to crush something or another every single day. I've seen like these memes where it's like, consistency doesn't always look like half full. Or like, it's not even every single time. It's like, sometimes it's here, sometimes it's here. Consistency is just pouring something into the glass every single day. That's a massive net positive. You know what I mean? So I guess because I had the stints and I knew like what it was a little bit like, I was like, if I get sober like indefinitely, then like I'm going to look better. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to have more energy. And I don't think that those first few times that I got sober, I like was fully committed. And now that I am, it's like, there's so many things that I was just overlooking or just like using as some sort of crutch to like social anxiety or dealing with emotions or all of these things that I now have to like face head on. Now I'm like, if I go out, it's like I can have a conversation with someone, remember it, and it's actually valuable, and it's not just some like 4 a.m. cocaine conversation about like building an app that's never going to happen. Ultimately, it's been awesome. It's different. It's very like, it's generally more chill. Like I say no to more things than before, but I still have a great time when I go out. I still have like, great experiences. And to me, it feels like a weakness now. And I don't mean that like it's just not the case for everybody. There are plenty of people that can drink responsibly and like, and manage their lives. And I think that that's part of what I've kind of learned in the program, is that like, if you have come to find that your life is unmanageable by doing these things, then you need to go this way. And I think that my life became unmanageable. I emotionally hit rock bottom as far as like what I could possibly like continue to withstand. And, more than anything, I just made the decision of like, if I want to have like a lifetime career in music, then like, this is the decision that I need to make. And I did. And I feel like more of a musician than ever.
What a ride, dude. What an adventure that you've been on. One of the big things that kept coming to my mind when you were telling us your story was, the price of your new life is your old life, and how that kind of was a reoccurring concept that kept coming up, right? You had to give up your old life, your old habits, your old way of thinking, all the way from ego to, the consumption of drugs to how you treated other people. You had to give all that up in order to forge this new life that you're going with Pixel Terror and with your art. And a follow-up question that I have concerning everything that you've been saying is that I do deeply wonder how, because you mentioned how now that you've kind of left that stuff behind and you're saying, you're feeling a lot better, you can show up to whatever you need to do on a daily basis more often, and you're feeling better. How does you being sober affect you creating music, right? Not just showing up, but the actual process of conveying your soul through music. Like how does being sober affect that?
I think that that's an important question, because I think a lot of people think that they can't have the same emotional material or like just be able to tap into that raw part of creating. I think that is the furthest thing from the truth. Yeah, if you're a fucking train wreck, it's easy to find problems and things to write about. But it's like when you're not a train wreck, you're still going to have life thrown at you, and you're still going to have to write about. And because you're facing it like raw, it actually hits even harder. Generally speaking, just showing up and like executing without question better. I'm more honed in. Like there's only been a few times where I wrote something super lit. There have been a few times when I was in Europe on tour, I wrote this song like blacked out. I was going from city to city on this little like mini Europe tour. I wrote this song on a train, super lit, but that's like very seldom. The over under for like day-to-day creativity is like it's not even comparable, honestly. For me and with my experience, and a lot of people in my circle too, who have seen like what I've been able to accomplish in just these two and a half years, it was just weighing the net positives to the net negatives. And like, it wasn't even a contest. I heard Mod's son, who's sober, I heard him say that basically like, when you have someone who is an addict and you divert your attention to the things that can actually progress your life, it's like a superpower, because you get hyper fixated on these things. And like, I've always had like a strong work ethic, but now I'm like using this, I guess, power of addiction, so to speak, on like things that are positive for my life. So I'm like, addicted to healthy habits now instead, like hyper addicted to getting more PRs in the gym, hyper fixated on learning, on like becoming better, on like better melodies, on singing better, on producing better, on continuing to learn, new sound design techniques and all of those kind of things.
As far as the logical side of me, that was the thing that convinced me the most, was that what is the net results of choosing to be sober, and what is the net results of choosing not to be sober? And I have yet to find a persuasive argument that says being on drugs or alcohol or whatever consistently is better for creativity, is better for health, is better for relationships, is better for business, is better. Like, out of you take all the categories that you deal with on a daily basis, what does being on drugs and alcohol benefit, or where does it take the cake of those most important categories? And I've yet to find a persuasive argument that says, oh, it makes your marriage better because like it doesn't exist. If I had the wish of my heart, everyone would be sober, because I feel like there'd be a lot of problems that would leave. But I also like love a free will and people being able to choose. And I understand that some people, they don't have addictive personalities like you and I do. And some people can function and can have a normal life with this kind of stuff. And so I still have to leave room for that. Yeah, I'm still, at the end of the day, I'm with you. I'm like, no one can convince me otherwise right now, at least. I still haven't heard a persuasive argument.
It would make things harder if there was a level playing field and everybody was sober. It's like, I feel like I have an advantage, at least to myself. Again, it's like, it's just not the case with everybody. It's like, you can be extremely successful and still have a drink once in a while, or whatever it is that you choose to do, I guess, so to speak. But for me, it's like, and the people that I'm, competing with, I guess, so to speak, if we want to call it a competition, for me, it's like, I feel like I have an edge, and like, why wouldn't I take advantage of that?
The big idea that I walk away with at the end of the day when it comes to sobriety is, let's focus on what is the number one priority. And the number one priority, I would say, for most creatives, artists, producers, is to be able to create the music or the art that resonates with you the most. If that is the number one priority, then we have to look at it. Are the actions aligning with that priority, right? Is the substances that you're putting into your body, do they align with that or do they not? Is the activities that you participate in align with that or do they not? Because if you're saying that's the number one priority, but then your actions do not reflect that, that causes a whole bunch of cognitive dissonance inside of you. It causes a whole bunch of problems. One of the things that I wanted to discuss in this podcast was how Pixel Terror was you and Arya, and we love Arya. Arya is fantastic. It seems when the split happened, it was very mutual. You seemed very, very at good terms with everybody. And so I know for me, I would love to know the behind the scenes story with that. I'm assuming Daw Nation would as well. So walk us through what happened with that, my guy.
A lot of that happened when referring back to kind of this big implosion of things in my life. We had a lot of obligations, like the Monster Cat Twitch thing that we were doing, and various things that I just wasn't, even if I was there, I wasn't present for mentally or emotionally or spiritually, and sometimes not even present. Like I would just have to leave, or I couldn't make it, or I wasn't in a place to be reliable to like certain obligations, I guess, so to speak. Truly, from the bottom of my heart, I think that like where we were with like certain managers and just kind of like what our projection was for the project did not align, not even just between me and Arya, but between like our team. And it just felt like there was like too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing. It was just kind of resulting in like a cluster bomb of confusion for ourselves, confusion for our fans. Like where do we want to take this? How do we get this project to the next level in a way that makes sense for all of us? I think Ari and I came to an agreement that we needed to do our own things creatively. And basically we came to an agreement on, what would happen, who would take the project. What it ended up coming down to is like who has more of an emotional attachment to the name Pixel Terror. And I had created the name Pixel Terror, and I had done a lot of like the cartoons for the brand. I had an idea originally to call the project Swine Flu and like have like a little pig, kind of like how Slushy has, the little slushy thing. I was like, we could have a little pig with wings. It's Swine Flu. And Ari was like, that's fucking retarded. I was like, all right. We always had to come to an agreement on like all of the decisions that we made. And I was like, well, what if we do like characters of ourselves? Because everybody's got like a little mascot or a shark or a marshmallow or whatever. And so obviously I think like drew a lot of attention to the project. Initially it was like, oh, all these other artists are like, oh, I want a little like pixel cartoon. And it kind of became a thing. We always wanted to like look at like what the highest caliber of like possible achievement could be, like, which is why we kind of wrote things from a very pop standpoint. And like, if you look at like Chroma and Enigma and a lot of these things, like they all have like very pop inspired aspects to them. So we were in a place where we were just like, well, what's the next phase or whatever. And like, we just kind of came to the decision that like, we wanted to do our own things. And I think that's been great for him. I think that he's like now able to create something that's like more truly personally authentic to himself. as am I. And like, you know, now I'm in a place where I still have a lot of personal hands-on with the creative, but I like working with other artists. I like working with artists that like can do things that I can't do. I'm tapping back into like different creative aspects of myself that wouldn't have made sense or may have made sense, but didn't quite align with what we were doing before with Pixel Terror. And to me, like those things, I think have the potential of growing the brand even further. And so does my team. And so we have a lot of like big plans for just how to continue to grow like the world of Pixel Terror and like continue to build the lore. And I have a Discord with a lot of the diehard fans. And so I can always kind of get their feedback on things if things like click or like make sense as far as like, you know, where I'm going creatively. Yeah, it's been fun, and I'm having honestly the most fun creating ever. So
what I gathered from that is that even though there was probably super hard times with you and Ari trying to figure things out, and you know, I'm absolutely positive that a lot of the ego stuff that you talked about, the sobriety stuff that you were struggling with, that also has to play into it with trying to figure stuff out with Pixel Terror and everything. But it sounds like now that the dust has settled, you're doing your thing with Pixel Terror. You're taking the creative reins on that. Ari's doing everything with Affinity. It sounds like the whole process at the end of the day, once the dust is settled, is that it is a net positive for both of you. I'm extremely happy that it is a net positive now, and that it has worked out for everyone's benefit. So everything that we've been talking about is kind of building up to what is the future for Pixel Terror? What does that look like? I know you're excited about the art stuff, the visual stuff, the storytelling stuff. You know, you're getting much more into the songwriting side of it. I'm excited to see where Pixel Terror goes. But where are we working towards, Mr. Bentley?
a lot of things in life are kind of like a series of full circle moments. I kind of see my artistic authenticity in terms of like how I grew up in my youth and how it relates to video games. So like, if you didn't know, like a lot of the Pixel Terror cartoons are like based on like a chibi Mega Man style. And then after Mega Man, like that was like Super Nintendo days. And then after like during the PlayStation days, I was like really into Final Fantasy. So I played like Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like Final Fantasy 10-2. I think I played some of 13 and then some of the new like re-render of Final Fantasy 7 was awesome. And movies growing up, I was like very much like a movie fanatic. And I think that that's like part of what music is based on, is like nostalgia. Life kind of comes in full circle moments. Like I'm kind of in the phase of like, okay, well, how do I want to evolve this brand, and how do I want to become like the character, so to speak, is how I'm looking at it now. Like I want to become like the characters that we created, but like be doing things and telling stories myself. And then that way it's like even more authentic, because people are seeing like these stories and these experiences and these metaphors to other things through these like different storylines or visual styles or whatever it is. Or so, you know, dubstep and electronic music was like where I primarily started making music. And I still love those things. I'm making some heavier stuff, like some tear out types of stuff, more drum and bass. I'm still making a lot of bro step. I'm still making a lot of like mid tempo and a lot of like, you know, what I would consider traditional Pixel Terror genres, so to speak. But for me, and kind of like where I'm at in this full circle thing, is like visually, I really like Final Fantasy and like the fashion styles and like those sort of things. And like ultimately I want to have like my own sort of clothing brand, kind of like how Ollie Sykes has Drop Dead. Like that's a big influence on like culture and style, in my opinion, for me. And like what is nostalgic to me is like metal and stuff. Like that's what I grew up on. Pop punk first, but I got into metal very quickly, after Blink-182. I think that's where, Ari and I kind of diverged, is like he just didn't like metal at all, wanting to grow as an artist and become like, again, like a better songwriter. And more than anything, like I've always been what I consider to be a performer. There's a threshold to me about like DJing, and like where it's come to meet that threshold for me is like, I'm just bored of DJing. Like I had a residency at this place called Bagatelle where I was DJing for like sometimes 8 hours a night. That was where I actually DJ'd Selena Gomez's birthday many years ago. Big highlight. But I've been DJing for a long time, and I liked open format because it was different every time. It was creative. Like, putting sets together is still like fun, and what, I love that aspect of it, but I've just always wanted more from myself as a performer. So one of the things that my dad told me when he was still here was that, he was like, if you want a lifelong career in music, then you may not be able to sing forever, if your voice gets f***ed up or like, whatever. But if you are a songwriter and people are bringing you into rooms to write songs, then you can have a f***ing lifetime career in music, potentially. I want to establish myself as a songwriter. I starred in a movie like 2 years ago alongside Danny Thorne. So it was kind of my first acting foray since like right out of college. That's going to be coming out this year. And I did a lot of the soundtrack for that. So, and I had a lot of fun, and I've done like various kind of like offbeat, like little soundtrack things for different brands and like, Instagram jingles and little trailers and different things over the years. So this is kind of my first like full movie soundtrack. So I love to do some movie stuff like soundtracks or video game scores, over the long term for sure, is like one of my personal goals. Kind of circling back, rock and metal and like songwriting in that lane is like where I see it going. And, I'm thinking about 5 to 10 years ahead, like where it's kind of going to land. And I already have an idea of like what I want to happen in the next 3 years. Like hopefully an album within the next 3 years. One of the EPs that I'm dropping this year is a 2-track EP that is like dubstep and hard dance, because that's just been something I've been dabbling in, and like a lot of hard dance has a lot of like rock oriented stuff, so they like it over there, and it allows me to kind of like feature my songwriting and my vocals on that kind of stuff. The next EP that I didn't tease a track list, but it's roughly 9 songs, but it may end up being like 1 or 2 less, but it's a pretty big EP. I'm just not calling it an album because I guess the best way to put it without giving too much away is that I want the first Pixel Terror album to be a culmination of like both old school and new school Pixel Terror. I want it to be big. Like I think that in the next couple years, I can get some big features on there. You only get one chance. And Aria said this too. Aria kind of is the one that put it in my mind, but you only get one chance to put out a debut album. And I want it to be impactful. So I'm just putting out some pretty big EPs. I'm very, very happy. My team is very happy. And I think that that big EP will be like my solo debut EP of like what I'm doing, where the sound is going. And we're building like a big live show around it. So like I have my guitarist and my drummer performing a lot of things or like lined up and rehearsing to perform a lot of things live. So like the goal is to have, the Pixel Terror live show be like the next big step into what the next chapter of Pixel Terror is going to look like. And I'll still do DJ tours, I mean, like my goal is to do something kind of like Pendulum where they have, DJ sets as well as, or DJ tours as well as like live shows. Yeah, that's pretty much my vision for the project right now.
We've learned about your worst decision. We've learned about the vision of Pixel Terror. We've learned about your struggles with sobriety and your ego and so many other things. And that has brought us here to the end where we are all wondering, we're all dying to know, what is one of the best decisions that you have made for your music career?
Two things. One, I think, is pretty obviously getting sober. And I think that like pivoting to like more of a vertical of just being a songwriter frontman. I mean, it hasn't necessarily materialized in full yet, but I think that starting to do vocals and perform on my songs is already catching a lot of attention. Like, yeah, there's more work that needs to be done behind the scenes, I think. I just have to continue building that skill and that strength. But I think that it's going to elevate the project a lot more because with AI and some of this stuff that's happening right now, like there is going to eventually be more of a demand for live elements or live, something besides just standing behind decks playing songs. I've already had a few shows where certain people that I respect have come up and be like, I didn't know that you were doing that on your show now. And like, that's cool. And so I know that it's paying off slowly. That's where my head is at. And I think that for me, making the decision to become more of a songwriter and more of a front man and more of a music artist is what my current prerogative and my rebrand, so to speak, is about. For anyone in the PNW, West Coast, San Francisco, Friday, May 23rd, I'll be playing at Fanta Rave, which is the officially unofficial after party for FanimeCon, the anime convention in San Francisco. Technically San Jose. Sorry, that is different. I've got some cool stuff. I have some like anime remix stuff. As everyone probably knows, there's a Pixel Terror song called Evolution that's based on like one of the songs from the actual game, but I'm doing like a metal revision of the Pokemon show theme song that is also dubstep. So some cool stuff that I'll be testing out at that show.
To wrap this up, I got two quick final questions for you. So the first one is, if anyone wants to get into the world of Pixel Terror, this is their first foray into that world, what is the best way to do that? Is it following you on Instagram? Are we talking TikTok? Where's the best place for them to get into your world?
Yeah, I would definitely say Instagram right now. I'm going pretty hard on TikTok. Also, YouTube is something that we're building the catalog on big time. And yeah, I mean, Spotify and SoundCloud still. Like I still rely heavily on SoundCloud for, the underground fan base, and I have a Patreon now too. And now that I have this actually all set up, I'm going in on a bunch of like walkthroughs and stuff. So I'll be continuing to release a lot more stuff on my Patreon.
And then the final quick question I have for you is there anyone that you would like to come on Behind the DAW to hear their story?
First one that comes to mind is Virtual Riot.
Dude, Bentley, this has been fantastic. I've had a great time. You've shared so much of your personal story, and both me and Daw Nation, we're all super grateful for that. Is there any final words you want to say before we wrap up?
Just stay tuned.
Daw Nation, listen to me. There is a free download down in the description that Bentley has given to us. So please be very kind and go grab that. And also, if you are interested in the School Base, again, link down in the description, or head on over to dawnation.net/School Base. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to enjoy our other episode. Wow. If you enjoyed this episode, I bit my lip. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to check out our other episodes. And you can listen to us anywhere: Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, literally every podcast thing that ever existed. You can find us there. It'd be awesome if you left reviews. And I think on Spotify, you can leave comments on podcasts. What a world. I gotta go. I got another podcast episode tomorrow with Underbelly. I'm so excited. Why the French laugh? Anyways, talk to you soon.